Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hey, Ruben.
Morning.
Hi, Gray. Let's see if someone else is going to join. Oh, wow. Hi. I guess we can start. So, 12th of July 2023, APAC EMEA Delivery Group Weekly. We have some coming out of office for the next weeks and months. And first discussion topic. Great, is yours.
Yeah, so I'll try and be pretty quick. I just wanted to give a brief overview of where I've been and what I've been doing, because I've been pretty absent from a lot of delivery related work recently. So I think everyone kind of already knows this, but for those who don't, I've been working on a kind of incubation project called Project Runway, which is basically putting together the skeleton of a internal developer platform for deploying services inside of GitLab. I've been working on it with Igor and Chance and a few other people around from platforms. We have basically gotten to the point where we are more or less able to run services within staging. We are able to automatically onboard services very easily, and we give end users a very easy ability to just drop in a CI configuration. Basically, they just include a CI file, and then they get this nice deployment process that deploys basically a container of their choosing on top of Google Cloud Run, which is basically Google's managed container service. We have basically, we've just kind of, getting things together at the moment. We do have two customers now and hoping to onboard more soon. We have a lot of feature requests. We've had a lot of positive feedback. And it looks like that so there was always question about, in terms of priorities for the company, where does this project sit? Are we going to invest a lot or invest a little? I think it's still open to discussion, what's going to happen exactly. However, from what I'm seeing so far, it definitely looks like that the project is going to keep going forward. It's not going to stop. And I think there will be continued investment for the future. So when we kind of first looked into this, I said we had a few options. If we wanted something quick, that was competent, well, not competent, I guess, complete, out of the box very, very quickly, then the best solution for us would be to basically take something off the shelf, take a credit card, go to one of the many managed services that do internal developer platforms, and they would give us something that would basically be everything end to end very quickly. However, obviously we decided not to go in that direction, which I'm really thankful for. The way we are building this is at the heart, it is GitLab, basically. So we are working on making the GitLab the heart of the platform. That's something I've always been very passionate about, and anyone who's worked with me in delivery knows I've always talked about that, dog fooding, enhancing the product, making it basically elevating the product to our needs, rather than just going off and trying to do other things. And so we're managing to do that quite successfully with Runway, and we will probably continue to do that. Well, we will continue to do that. That's the way we are building it. We're working closely with the environments team, which was the configure group before they got renamed, as well as some of the CI/CD teams, basically, showing the parts of the product that we need improved or we need help with, and they've been very receptive. And it's actually going to kind of flow the other way as well. They're very interested in helping have internal developer platform-like features as part of the product, but we're actually moving quicker than they are. So I foresee in the future that basically we'll be taking what we're doing for Runway and putting it back in the product as well. And that's basically also core to everything we do. We're trying to minimize the amount we're building outside of GitLab where it makes sense, and try and push as much in the product as possible. In the future, I think whatever happens to Runway and how it develops and grows, I think it's going to have considerable impact for .com and delivery, even if it is, say, a more isolated platforms team that works on it, that's not scalability or delivery, for example. Because what we're seeing now is a lot of interest in, you know, using Runway and the kind of philosophy it provides, where you build it, you run it, developers use it, they get nice kind of smooth path for deployments and safety and everything. And so what that means for us in delivery is two things. It gives people an option to production that is outside the monolith, which has massive ramifications. And the second part that has even bigger ramifications is I foresee a future where people will be deploying and running services in Runway, and a decision may be made that they want to actually ship that service as part of self-managed releases. And that will have very, very big implications and, you know, for I guess our team, right? For how we do self-managed releases. What that looks like, what are the rules around all this? It's still very open to debate. I'm just trying to think ahead in the future of like where I see this going and what some of the challenges that delivery especially might see coming down the line. For example, if a service is deployed in Runway and they decide to go in self-managed release, do they get kicked back out of Runway? Do they have to go back into auto deploy? Probably not. You know, we have teams that like registry and CAS who would quite happily go into Runway as well, you know, even though they're already in the monolith. And what does that mean? Do we gatekeep people out of that? We don't want to, but, you know, at the same time, do we, part of the Runway software suite, do we do something like work with developers on automation so that they can define a release that goes into a self-managed release, right? And whether that's just dropping version files so that, you know, our package process can pick it up, and what does that mean? Where does distribution fit into that? So these are all big questions. So I do think the project in the future, as it moves on, is going to have obviously quite a big impact on delivery, which is why I feel very lucky to be involved, and I think that's why they did want someone from delivery involved. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Great. Can you touch on the part where how this is going to simplify the readiness review?
Yeah, so yep, sure. So the goal is that once we kind of fully develop Runway, and we're still got a bit to go, but once we have the platform kind of at a point where, well, not fully developed, but, you know, we will put the platform itself through a readiness review, and that readiness review will not only cover the platform itself, but also like services that are going through it. And the idea is if you're deploying a service through Runway, then you don't need a readiness review, or probably just a very much more cut down readiness review, right? Like the idea of these kind of tools and processes is I'm not going to say the word speed, but it's smoothness, right? And it's a two-way street. This isn't just like you can do whatever you want. We have a very strict set of rules, boundaries, what you can and can't do, and kind of the services we are targeting, you know, are kind of very specific. An example would be we're not going to be targeting like stateful services really at all, or at least not to begin with. The platform in the future may expand to support that, probably will. But yeah, what that means is that when you're onboarded into Runway, within a couple of minutes, you get a staging and production environment. And from the time you commit your first piece of code and you've included the Runway stuff that you need to do, you're up, you're running, you're in, you've got a deployment and staging, a deployment and production, you're getting metrics, you're getting, you know, safe rollouts, rollbacks, you get traffic control yourself, all of that kind of good stuff. we kind of give. We're looking at, as an example as well, like this week I'm looking at geographically distributed deployments. So for example, deploying the same service across 3 different geographic regions, and then using Google's global load balancer to route traffic intelligently to the closest location. That, for example, has huge ramifications for some services, and it's not very important to others. The service that we are running at the moment is the AI gateway, so the code suggestion stuff, where we are working with that team on running that at the moment. So having containers or services that run very close to you, and as someone from Australia, I noticed this, very much helps the user experience, right? So something like that, where you're typing and you're trying to get some responses back in your IDE quickly, every little bit helps, although round trip to the container is by no means like a huge part of the whole process request done.
Thank you. Any questions about Runway?
So the last thing I'll close off then with is, so the other kind of implication it will have for delivery should be in the back of our minds is, I mentioned this to Marin to mention up to the management chain, people like Jorg and so forth, which I think at that level, they're starting to kind of understand. And I think everyone here understands this premise I'm about to say, right? For so long, GitLab.com, like everything we do is based off the premise that we run GitLab.com like our customers run GitLab, just at a bigger scale, right? We deploy, we say it's on .com, it's good, we cut that release and we change it self-managed customers. As the company has had this appetite for things outside the monolith, and to be fair, a lot of these services will not go to customers. The goal is for services not to go to customers. But as we start to change that model, that has huge ramifications on a lot of assumptions we make, right? Like a lot of the assumptions we make around our tooling and our processes based off that. So we need to be careful, and we need to be aware that we are changing some foundational assumptions that GitLab runs on and delivery runs on. It's not meaning we can't do it, but it does mean that things that it become more important. Testing, our environments management, release environments is the project I was working on, which unfortunately now is just kind of left to languish, becomes more and more important, because we are going to have to like test and validate more and more different configurations, and maybe we can't rely on .com as much to accurately reflect what our customers are doing. Get the GitLab environment toolkit, right? And those reference architecture stuff, making that more automatable, which is like what the dedicated team is doing, like all of that work becomes more and more important, right? Because we need to build off we need to expand the ways we're looking at deploying and testing GitLab in ways that are close to customers, if GitLab.com no longer matches that 100%.
That's a good call out, I think, and move towards cells in the distant
that's another
future
thing, right?
Is probably going to lean more heavily on things like Get and other stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, but you're right. That's an absolute that's the same problem, right? Once we introduce cells, I don't see any self-managed customer installing and like spinning up multiple. Maybe they do, I don't know. But cells is another thing where we're going to start to see GitLab.com break away from that model. And what I said, I think it's fine. Everyone agrees it's time, but for us here in delivery, I know we rely a lot on that idea. So we just need to be careful now and make sure we're thinking about how that's going to change now.
Sam, these are to Grain.
Yeah, just I saw that message in Slack and thought might be worth just having the conversation since everyone's in the room on the Istio pre stuff.
Yeah, I think this is also something that would also need Vladimir, but also Skarbek's input, because there were something that was discussed there. But I'm happy to expand on what Grain is posted on delivery, so we can see if we can clarify some parts. Graham, do you wanna give us a view of the thing about pre needed to be reverted before?
Which is like pre is used by everyone, right? Like it's used by all of us to roll out changes to basically pre is kind of like our first stop, right? When we need to make changes to staging or production. So like, for example, I got a merge request. We got a merge request today to change the scaling of Sidekick to Kita or something, right? Like we need to do that in pre first, so we can do that and validate that before we do staging in production. It's just kind of like it's an extra validation environment that is separate from the ones that are touched by auto deploy. So it's important that environment matches how staging and production are deployed, because there's a lot of changes that people do. Like a good one was, I saw come recently was like changing object storage configuration. Like it's stuff related to changing the tooling or automation or the setup that we have for our environment. So we can't just kind of like, if we take that away, on Monday, I have to do the chart bump, and I need to be able to do that in pre and run QA against pre. And that's the important thing as well, right? All of the automation we've built in GitLab Com is there for a reason. I haven't been following the work going on with system closely, but from where I've looked, I've seen no addressing of that problem. Like the fact that the workflow we have in Kate's workloads, GitLab Com, needs to be preserved. It can't just be thrown away. Like, so I don't know what we're trying to do with this pre-2 or anything. I have no idea, but pre needs to stay, and we need to keep it in like the workflow so we can make changes to all environments, and they're QA'd and they're rolled out like cluster by cluster, I guess.
I can comment on that
Cool.
if you hear me.
Yeah.
So the reason why we switched pre to cluster is that currently we have an instance that it's like traffic managed by Istio, and we have instance running on pre2 cluster as well. And in order to configure the instance properly, like all routing rules and et cetera, we need to have this instance to respond to the proper URL, not like a cluster long wide to URL. Since spinning up new and this pre2 cluster is also connected to pre-data plane. So like stuff that it's running on the cluster is stateless, and it's connected to the Redis and Postgres instances of pre-cluster. So therefore, like splitting and separating this and creating the new data plane for new cluster, we didn't know how much time it would take to do that. And that's why I just like, okay, let's temporarily switch a record to point to new cluster in order to make it working. But since yesterday we kind of expanded the scope a little bit, and wait a second, like, and another like the trigger why I did that, I synced with systems team, and we decided that we are using pre-environment only when we have release, right? And Amy suggested to contact quality team and ask them how they use pre. I synced with them, and they told me that they are using pre a week before release, and the rest of the time pre is kind of calculating noops and doing nothing. That's what I understood. And
But
that's
this is
why
only
I
half of the
switched this.
story.
Sorry?
I said this is only half of the story because the other purpose. So quality can't know, but basically infrastructure. This is what Graham was telling, that environment is made also for testing configuration management changes in general. So it's something that is close to production. And so when someone wants to test configuration change, they do this on pre, so that they can test it without affecting staging or any other thing that is in the critical path to the release.
Sure. That was not communicated with me properly.
That's
and
cool.
I going to switch again, like I'm going to switch pre back to the state that it used to be yesterday. And there are still something needs to be done apart from this work on pre-environment. And afterwards, I've done that. I will think how to do that properly. Like I think this better way, the better way would be to separate data plane, to have like a dedicated environment for this work.
I think so. So yeah, look, I understand. I see now where the confusion comes in, because yeah, that pre has two customers, I guess. So there is two customer groups. There's definitely the quality and delivery as a customer group around the release process, which you pointed out, you got the timings for and everything. That's great. But yeah, it's a bit of a more invisible customer group, which is developers. So we have developers and infrastructure people using it as a means of safely rolling out configuration changes. So it is unfortunate. I think we have kind of gotten ourselves into a bit of a unfortunate pickle in terms of like, what do we do? Because we're kind of, I see what I understand what you're trying to do, and like I'm trying to think of how we can do both, and it's really hard. I can't think of a way besides maybe it's time to do a separate data plane, similar to, which should just be a database. I can give you some hints on how to seed the data and stuff as well once it's running and the QA stuff, but it should just be a Cloud SQL database similar to what we already have. And I don't know what we do for Redis. I think it might be memory store. Yes, it is memory store. So it should probably just be a reusing of some of the Terraform we have in that environment to spin up more copies of that. And then you can just kind of connect it to that. And then hopefully, you will also need to like enable some of the database syncing tasks in the chart and stuff. Like there's some few things you'll need to do, but hopefully it wouldn't be too difficult. It is unfortunate because if the testing was short enough, we could probably just do some messaging and kind of get away with it. But honestly, it sounds like if you're going to be routing and you want to have a good amount of time to test stuff and not feel like you're rushed and everything, maybe spending the bit of time to do that, then you get all the flexibility you want, and then you don't have to worry about anything. Maybe that is the easier way.
Yeah, like the idea of separate data plane was flying around. But the thing is that no one knew how long it's going to take, and the end of the quarter is just around the corner. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So I'm going to switch it back today, like after the meeting, and we will see. Well, I will start doing something else, but then we will see how to spin up the new data plane. Maybe we'll also need to rename the environment. Not call it like something different.
That shouldn't be too difficult. See if you've got an issue somewhere about that, tag me on it, because I've got some notes on like how you sync the database, like how you make sure it's running the database migration tasks, and like I can give you some hints on how to make sure the data plane gets populated, and also some pointers onto the data stores you need. I think it should just be Redis and database.
Yeah, we don't have an issue because we decided not to do that right now and think about this next quarter. But if we have to do that now, then I will create an issue, obviously.
Let's create an issue anyway, so we remember. We add it maybe, for the next iteration, so we already have it there.
Isn't that issue just the flip side of 19414, which was proposing creating something dedicated for release candidate?
Oh, yeah,
It's
maybe.
basically the same thing.
Well,
I don't think we
sure,
want
sure.
to end up having 3 environments.
Oh, for sure not.
actually,
think we
you're
need to
right.
keep an
You're right.
account.
It is the flip side. Sorry, I misinterpreted. You're right. It's actually like a flip of that. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, and potentially just another option update to that, right? Is have a more dedicated environment for delivery, work.
We should document. Yeah, we should document some of this. It would be good to know this as well. Like, oh yeah, this is what you need to do for a data plane. Like that we should really have that information if we don't already.
Anything that's verbalized, Alessio, from your point, or just not?
No, nothing.
Okay. And you, Ben, your point about adding information, our pre-resume are used to, I think is a very good point. So let's document it in our documentation. Thank you for taking
Yeah,
action.
I'll add a summary about the uses of those environments.
Yeah. Good. Anything else on this topic? If not, I'm going to stop the recording.